اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى حفيدك وحبيبك موسى بن جعفر يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا نجاة الأمة. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Holy Quran, قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا. In honor of Imam Al-Kathim, أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. The stories of the Holy Quran are stories that contain several morals, lessons from which humanity benefits. The beauty of these stories is that they are timeless, as in, the story contains morals or lessons that any human can benefit from regardless of his time and regardless of his area. You realize that those who were living during the days of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they benefited from the stories of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, such as the story of Lut, Hud, Salih alayhimus salam, and other prophets. And at the same time, we human beings who are living in year 2023, 14 centuries after Rasulullah's advent sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we also benefit from the stories of the Quran. The reason behind this is that Al-Quran Al-Kareem is a timeless book. It's a universal book that was brought down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all times. And so the stories, whether we're looking at the stories of prophets or other individuals, the stories of the Quran hold what? Important lessons for all of us. However, when reading these stories, we realize something else. We realize another point, and that is, in many instances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a particular miracle performed by a prophet, performed by one of God's close slaves. Where? In the story itself. For example, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, when speaking about Ibrahim alayhi salam, mentions how Ibrahim was saved from the fire of Nimrod miraculously. Nimrod wanted to destroy Ibrahim alayhi salam, and as all of you know, Ibrahim was thrown into an enormous fire. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervened to save Ibrahim. قال يا نار. He said what? O fire, kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. He said, O fire, be cold and peaceful to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah mentioned how He supported Musa alayhi salam, and how Musa split the sea when he simply struck the sea with his staff. He mentioned how Isa alayhi salam revived the dead with Allah's permission. So these miracles were confirmed where? In Al-Quran Al-Kareem. If that means anything, it means believing in the miracle is part of faith. One cannot be faithful, cannot be a true believer if he does not believe in the miracles of the Prophets ﷺ and or the close slaves of God. Because to be a believer, you have to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to believe in Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Well, Al-Quran mentioned that the Prophets ﷺ, they performed marvelous miracles. Hence, this is not something that can be rejected, something that can be neglected, that can be denied. The miracle, believing in the miracle, believing in the concept of the miracle is what? Is part of Iman, part of faith. However, when we look at our day and age, we find that certain people are skeptical when it comes to miracles. They find miracles, or in general, or some miracles that we speak about, quite far-fetched. Hence, tonight we want to shed light on this vital topic by answering two questions. Hopefully, when we answer these questions, we will be strengthening our belief in what? In the miracles of the prophets and the imams and the close slaves of God, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim. And we'll be clarifying that believing in these miracles is not bizarre. Accepting these miracles is not something bizarre. Having a miracle performed by a close slave of God is not bizarre, nor is it something far-fetched. So what are the questions that we want to tackle tonight? The first one is, are miracles illogical or not? Do the miracles contradict pure logic or not? Secondly, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create a particular miracle? Why would Allah Azza wa Jal aid one of His close slaves such that the close slave of God, al-wali, performs a miracle? Why? What is the motive, or what is the goal behind that? Inshallah, we'll shed light on these two questions after a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Starting off with the first question, are miracles illogical or not? This is a very important issue that we need to understand. Miracles, my brothers and sisters, are supernatural. Supernatural means what? It means the miracle breaks the laws of nature or breaks a law from the laws of nature. But it does not break the laws of logic. Hence, it is not illogical. In other terms, a miracle is logically possible, naturally impossible. The Prophets ﷺ, or the Imams, or Sayyidah Zahra, or one of the close slaves of God, Al-Awliya, Salamullah alayhim, what do? They don't perform a deed which contradicts common sense. Rather, they perform a deed that breaks one of the laws of physics or chemistry, or say, one of the laws of nature. Let us spend a few minutes thinking about this issue because it will give us more insight on what? More insight on the concept of the miracle. Sometimes we talk about certain issues that are illogical. What's illogical? It is something that contradicts a logical principle. Bear in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being in a way He instilled logical principles in his intellect. These logical principles are what we call common sense. Believe it or not, every human, regardless of his faith and regardless of his ethnicity, has these logical principles in his intellect. He knows them. They're innate. They're part of what? Part of his human nature, or say part of his intuition. Can you give us an example of a logical principle? Yes. I'll give you a few examples. Let's start with the topic of existence and non-existence. Can a human being or a creation of God exist and not exist at once in the same world? Is this possible or impossible? What do you say? Can someone exist and not exist at the same time in the same world? Impossible. It's impossible. Because there's a contradiction here. The intellect tells you it's either you exist in a particular world at a certain time or you don't. But existing and not existing at the same time, at once, in the same world is what? It's impossible. It is possible to not exist in a particular world and to exist in another. That's fine. Right now, for example, we have people who passed away, right? They left this dunya. So they don't exist in our current world called dunya. Or say they don't physically exist right now in this world. But they still exist. Where? In the other world. The world of the hereafter. The world of barzakh. Their spirits are there. So it's possible for someone to not exist in a particular world when he exists at the same time somewhere else in a different world. But to exist and not exist at once in the same world is what? Is impossible. So if someone says, Fulan called Larry or Dave exists right now in Canada and does not exist right now in Canada at the same time, he would be presenting an idea that's what? Illogical. It contradicts common sense. Let me give you a second example. I believe we've presented this example before, but we'll present it again. There's a logical principle which says, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِي. If someone does not possess a particular item, he cannot give it. For example, if you don't have knowledge, then you can't teach knowledge. You want to teach math, but you have absolutely no knowledge of math. You know nothing in regards to math. Can you teach it? You can't. Why can't you? Because you don't have it. You don't have knowledge in order for you to give it to others. You don't have knowledge to teach it to others. Similarly, if someone wants to feed the poor, but he has no food with him, no money, no job, no resource he could use to sustain the poor, can he feed them? He can't. As simple as that. Why can't he? Well, because فَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. If someone does not have a particular thing, he cannot give it. This is what? Common sense. So if someone presents an idea which contradicts the principle we just mentioned, he would be mentioning something illogical. Now, when we come to the miracles of the Anbiya or the Imam or Sayyidah Zahra alayhimus salatu wassalam, what do we find? We find that the miracles are not illogical. Is it impossible for a human being? Is it logically impossible for a human to split the sea when he strikes his staff on the sea? No. It's not logically impossible. It's naturally impossible. Meaning, the human being, because he's a limited being and his power is very limited, he doesn't have the power usually to cause the sea to split as soon as he strikes it with his staff. So it's naturally impossible for him to do this, but not logically impossible. The idea itself is what? It's possible from a logical perspective. Why? Because the intellect tells you, if that human being was given the power he needed to actually cause the sea to split, as soon as he strikes it with his staff, then he can do it. The same applies to what? The same applies to splitting the moon. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi pointed at the moon and he caused it to split. Surah Al-Qamar speaks about this. In the first verse, when Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. Allah says, the hour has drawn near, meaning the day of judgment, and the moon has been split. The Prophet split the moon with Allah's permission when he pointed towards the moon. Now, when you bring this idea forward and you ask yourself, is this possible or not? If a person points at the moon, can he cause the moon to split? Usually, no, he can't. This is naturally impossible. Why? Again, because the human being does not have the power to come forth and cause the splitting of the moon by simply pointing towards the moon. However, is it logically impossible? No, it's possible. Logic tells you, if the human is aided with the power he needs to actually cause the splitting of the moon, when he simply points at the moon, it can happen. So, splitting the moon, reviving the dead, curing the blind by simply, touching the eyes of the blind, walking on water, and other miracles performed by Ahlul Bayt or the prophets, by Sayyidah Zahra, by the awliya alayhimus salam, all of those are what? Naturally impossible, logically possible. Now, when we come to the Anbiya or the Imam or Sayyidah Zahra or the awliya alayhimus salam, what do we say? We say they did not perform those miracles on their own. Rasulullah Muhammad did not split the moon on his own. Isa did not walk on water on his own. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam did not lift the gate of Khaybar on his own. Rather, they were aided. By who? By Allah. Who is Allah? Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir, the Quran says. Surely Allah is able to do anything. Allah has infinite power. This God who has infinite power, He is the one who aided the prophets. He is the one who aided the Imams. He is the one who aided Sayyidah Zahra salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim. Hence they were able to do what? To break the laws of nature. Because they were aided by the God who created nature. By the God who instilled the laws of nature in our universe. When you bring this idea to people, especially people who are very fond of, physics and similar sciences, they might find such words far-fetched. But it is far-fetched to say that the God, in fact, it is silly to say that the God who created this universe and created the laws of nature cannot break those laws. He is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who made these laws exist. And so He can break them whenever He wants. He can manipulate these laws in whatever way He wants. If we keep this in mind, that the Anbiya, the Imma, the blessed Lady of Light, Fatima, and the close slaves of God, Salamullahi alayhim, they performed their miracles because they were aided by Allah, who has infinite power. Then accepting their miracles will not be what? Will not be far-fetched. Accepting these miracles will not be difficult. On the contrary, it will be easy to accept the miracles and to absorb them. Allah Azza wa Jal, believe it or not, alluded to this issue in the Quran when He mentioned how He blessed Zakaria alayhi salam with Yahya. Zakaria, as many of you know, was one of God's greatest prophets. But he was tested. What was his test? For a long time, Zakaria alayhi salam was left without a progeny. He wanted a progeny. He wanted a child. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept on delaying what? Zakaria's wish. Keep the story in mind. And here I'm talking to myself before I talk to you. Keep the story in mind. The next time you pray for something, and for some reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delays what? Fulfilling your need. He delays it. You pray, and you pray, and you pray. And for some reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps on what? Delaying the fulfillment of your need. Remember the story of Zakaria. Zakaria is much more important than us. Much holier than us. Alayhi salam. Right? He's holy, he's sacred, he's a prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delayed the fulfillment of his need for an amount of time. Did Zakaria lose hope? No. He did not lose hope. He kept on supplicating, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless him with a child. But there was a problem. What was the problem? Zakaria was very old. Extremely old. And his wife was barren. As in, she could not have children. She could not conceive. So now how will he have a child? He's very old. And the wife is barren. She's sterile. How is he going to have a child? Did he lose hope? No, he didn't. He kept on praying. Kept on supplicating. And by doing that, Zakaria alayhi salam was teaching us a big lesson. Which is, when you see that your circumstances are not the best, that, as they say, all odds are against you, don't lose hope. When you see that you're in a predicament that seems to have no solution, don't despair. Because although you cannot find a solution, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create thousands of solutions for you. And you truly don't know when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring salvation. He can bring it at any time, especially when you do not expect to receive salvation. So Zakaria kept on supplicating until Allah Azza wa Jal gave him the good news. In Surah Maryam, Allah mentions this. How He gave him the good news that he will be blessed with a child called Yahya. Salamullahi alayh. Now Yahya's story is connected to Imam Hussein's story. Perhaps one day we can have a majlis about this to explain the relationship between Yahya and Abu Abdullah salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhima. Zakaria was pleased. He was very happy. And so he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quran says, قال ربي أنى يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا وقد بلغت من الكبر عتيا. He said, "Oh my Lord, how shall I have a son when my wife is barren and I have grown quite decrepit from old age?" Why is he asking this question? Was Zakaria in doubt of Allah's power? No. He's a prophet. He does not doubt in God subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it is said in the books of tafsir, in some books of tafsir, that Zakaria was so happy, he wanted more details from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, give me more information. How will this happen? In what way will you do it? He wanted, to hear more details, more information, more words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of his joy, or say out of his extreme joy. So Allah said, what did Allah say? قَالَ كَذَلِكَ. He said, the issue is as we told you, meaning Zakaria, you're going to be blessed with Yahya. That's a given. خلاص. Then he said, قال ربك هو علي هين. Your Lord said that this is easy for me. It's easy. Think of this. Think of this issue for a split second or for a minute. If you have a very old man who's married to a lady who's barren, and both of them go to a doctor, and they say, doctor, for the love of God, do something so we can have a child. What will the doctor say? I can't. Right? I don't have the knowledge or the ability to give you a child based on modern science, based on the laws of this universe. I can't give you a child. This man's very old. And the lady is what? Barren. That was the main problem. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do anything. Remember, Allah Azza wa Jal is the immortal doctor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the doctor of he who does not have a doctor. In Dua al-Jawshan, we call him saying, Ya tabiba, man la tabiba la. O physician of he who has no physician. So Allah tells Zakaria, Huwa alayya hayyin. It is easy for me to perform this. It is easy for me to give you a child. Then Allah Azza wa Jal continues saying, He says, وَقَدْ خَلَقْتُكَ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَلَمْ تَكُ شَيْئًا. And I've created you before when you were nothing. You were nothing. Think of this. At a certain phase, none of us existed. Only Allah Ta'ala existed. Before time, before the creation of the creations, only Allah existed. Then He created Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And after God knows how long, He created the universe. At a certain phase or time, me and you did not exist. You know what that means? It means we were absolute nothingness. But today we walk, we talk, we eat, we sleep, we ask questions, we object, we fight. Who created us? Allah. But there was no substance from which you were created. It's not that Allah Ta'ala used a particular substance to make you. You were nothing. There was only Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah Azza wa Jal did what? Allah said, Kun, be. And He created you. So that means, technically, you are a walking, talking miracle if you think about it. You're a walking, talking miracle. You're a living miracle. You were absolute nothingness and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you. Allah brought you into existence, gave you existence. So if you and I are walking, talking miracles, then why doubt in the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ? Why doubt their miracles? Why do some of us have, difficulty accepting certain miracles performed by Ahlul Bayt or the Prophet salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim? So we've answered the first question. Is a miracle illogical? No. Miracles are logically possible, but they're supernatural. They break the laws of nature. The second question remains, which is, why the miracle? Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create a miracle? What's the goal? Well, there are multiple goals. Number one, it's a reminder for me and you and all people of God's power. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do anything. And that reminder is needed. We need it. Why? We need it to strengthen our hope in Allah, and we also need it to strengthen our fear in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our fear of Allah Azza wa Jal. When you remember that Allah Ta'ala is able to do anything, and you go through a circumstance, through a state where you live a particular predicament, and you don't see a way out, by having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you remember that Allah Azza wa Jal can change your circumstance. He can solve that predicament if He wants, whenever He wants, Azza wa Jal. So having hope in God Azza wa Jal pushes you to what? To continue your journey and to continue striving to become a perfect human being, and it helps you refrain from giving up. On the other hand, remembering Allah's power is very important because it instills positive fear in our heart. Fear of who? Fear of God. And that fear is needed to avoid sin. So number one, the miracle is a reminder of God's power. That's one benefit behind the miracle. Are there other benefits? Yes. Number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confirms the prophethood of the prophet, or the imamate of the imam, or the status of one of his close slaves like Sayyidah Zahra salawatullah alayhim, through their miracles. I believe you remember in Fatimiyya we said this. During Fatimiyya, or during the birth anniversary of Fatima Zahra, Zahra, one of her titles was Zahra, the Lady of Light. Why? Because she had two lights. She had a spiritual light, meaning she was the source of guidance, and she had a physical light. Her face would emit light. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show us that Zahra was no ordinary lady. She was the embodiment of faith, alayha salatu wassalam. So it confirms what? The status of a prophet or an imam or a close slave of God. It confirms the prophethood of the prophets, the imamate of the imams, alayhim wassalam. Thirdly, the miracle, or say the miracles performed by the awliya, remind the people every now and then, every once in a while, that these individuals are not ordinary believers. No, they're more than that. They're beyond that. It's a reminder that these individuals are what? Are special slaves of God. You know, when we look at the biographies of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, you realize that our imams performed miracles abundantly. Imam al-Sajjad, Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Kathim, and the rest, salawatullah wa salamu alayhim. These were reminders that these men were the imams appointed by God. They weren't only mu'mins, only believers. No, they were more than that. They were the embodiments of faith, the embodiments of iman, alayhim salawatullah. So from one perspective, the miracle confirms a claim that is done by the wali, by the close slave of God. If he claims that he's a prophet and he does a miracle, then it confirms his claim of prophethood. If he claims to be an imam and performs a miracle, it confirms his claim of imamate. But from another perspective, on the other hand, the miracle also serves as a reminder that this individual is not an ordinary believer. He's one of Allah's close servants. Hence you find, when you look at the biography of Imam Moussa ibn Ja'far salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, that Imam Al-Kathim also performed many miracles during his time. Many miracles. Let me share one with you tonight before we go to the musibah of the Imam, before we go to his tragedy, alayhi salam. Harun al-Abbasi, as many of you know, was jealous of Imam al-Kathim, salamullah alayhi. Harun tried multiple times to lower the Imam and to disprove his imamah, to disprove his imamate. Although Harun knew deep down inside that the Imam of truth was none other than Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam. And so one day, what does he do? One day, Ali ibn Yaqtin says, rahmatullah alayhi, as you can find in the book Al-Amali for Sheikh al-Saduq, he says, Harun summoned a magician, or say a trickster, someone who does tricks. He summoned him. Why? He wanted that trickster to embarrass Imam al-Kathim alayhi salam in front of the people. And he wanted to lower the Imam and to disprove his imamate. So he summoned that trickster so he may perform a trick against the Imam alayhi salam to embarrass him in front of certain individuals. And he invited the Imam for dinner. The Imam came. Now the tradition says the trickster performed a particular trick such that whenever the servant of the Imam wanted to grab a loaf of bread or a piece of bread, somehow the bread would fly. Remember, he's a magician, so he has his tricks. Whenever the servant would try to grab a piece of bread or a loaf of bread, the bread would fly. This happened multiple times. And Harun was thrilled, was very happy, because he thought that he was ridiculing Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam. Here the Imam salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi took a stance. He showed Harun and his likes that if you can pull tricks, we can perform miracles. If you have tricks up your sleeves, we present real miracles from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The tradition says what? It says there was a curtain in the gathering that had the picture of a lion. So the Imam looked at the picture and he said, Ya Asad Allah, O lion of Allah, khudh adu Allah. Take the enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The tradition says the image came out of the curtain, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned it into an actual lion. Remember, inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is able to do anything. So an enormous lion emerged from the curtain, swallowed the magician and went back into the curtain. Harun could not believe his eyes. The tradition says Harun and his comrades fell unconscious. They fell unconscious, they fainted. When he woke up, he told the Imam, I ask you for my sake to bring back that magician. I ask you for my sake to make that image bring back the magician, the trickster. You know what the Imam told him? He presented a marvelous answer. He reminded him of the showdown between Musa alayhi salam and the magicians of Pharaoh. In that showdown, what happened? The magicians, they threw their staffs and ropes, and it seemed as if the staffs and ropes turned into snakes. But that was just magic, mere magic. Musa, on the other hand, he threw his staff and it turned into an actual serpent with Allah's permission. And it began swallowing the ropes and the staffs of the magicians rapidly. That's what the Quran says. Such that the magicians fell in sujood. They fell in prostration. and they submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They became believers in God, Musa and Harun alayhim as-salam. So the Imam told him what? Imam Musa reminded Harun of who? Of Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam. He told him, if the staff of Musa brought back the staffs and the ropes of the magicians, then the image will bring back the trickster. What does that mean? It means the Imam was telling him, don't dream of seeing that man again. He's gone. And the Imam was reminding Harun and reminding us that the one who gave Musa, Nabiullah Musa, the power to, change the staff into a serpent, or in better terms, the one who aided Musa such that when Musa threw the staff, it turned into a serpent, is the same one who helped Imam Musa alayhi salam, such that when he told the image to come out of the curtain, it did. Believe it or not, when we narrate such a story, you might find people who will ridicule these stories, who will make fun of these stories, which is sad. Why? Musa ibn Ja'far is more important than Musa alayhi salam. With all due respect to Musa ibn Imran, Ahlul Bayt are God's beloved. Ahlul Bayt are God's favorite creations. So why can I, for example, accept that the staff of Musa turns into a serpent, but I can't accept the story in regards to the image of the lion? I cannot accept that Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam causes the image of the lion to emerge from the curtain. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aided them both. This was one of his miracles. One of his miracles. In short, he performed many miracles during his life which reminded Harun al-Abbasi and others that the Imam of truth was Musa ibn Ja'far. And as I told you earlier, Harun knew it. He knew that the Imam of truth was Musa ibn Ja'far. Hence, he tried his best to extinguish the light of Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam. He tried his best. He would mistreat the Imam. He tried to kill him multiple times. He imprisoned him. It's enough to hear that Imam Al-Kathim's imamah lasted for 34 years. Half of that period, 17 years, were spent where? In the prisons of Harun, in the dungeons and prisons of Harun al-Abbasi. Near the end of his life, Musa ibn Ja'far salawatullah wa salamu alayh was placed in the dungeon of As-Sindi ibn Shahik. As-Sindi la'natullah alayh was a Nasibi. He despised the Imam. You could imagine the treatment he would show the Imam. Now some guards were somewhat lenient with the Imam. Sindi ibn Shahik was not lenient. Sindi ibn Shahik tried his best to make Imam al-Kathim's life as miserable as possible. On top of being guarded and supervised by his own enemy, he was placed in a pit that was pitch black. The tradition says it was so pitch black, so dark, that you could not tell the difference between daytime or nighttime if you were in that pit. At times, Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam would have difficulty breathing. And so he would bring his blessed face close to an opening in the pit to breathe some air. When As-Sindi would see this, he would slap Imam Al-Kathim salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. He would slap him on his cheek. I say, Ya Aba Al-Hasan Al-Kathim, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayk, subhanallah, what happened to your mother Fatima happened to you as well. Zahra was slapped on her cheek from over her veil. And you, O son of Zahra, went through the same. Salawatullah alaykum. Yes, the days of the Imam alayhi salam were coming to an end. And so Harun al-Abbasi sent As-Sindi ibn Shahik an amount of poisoned dates and told him to poison the Imam. Ajarakumullah, ajarakallah ya baqiyatullah. As-Sindi ibn Shahik presented those dates to the Imam salawatullah alayhi. At that point, Imam Al-Kathim knew that the time of martyrdom had arrived. Even then, the Imam tried to refrain from eating the dates, but As-Sindi told him, you have to eat these dates. And so, ajarakumullah, Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam ate a bunch of dates. Then the Imam stopped. When he stopped, As-Sindi ibn Shahik told him, eat more. Musa ibn Ja'far looked at Sindi and he told him, Hasbuk. He told him this heartbreaking word, Hasbuk. قد بلغت ما تحتاج إليه. He told him, this is enough. You have achieved your goal. You have fulfilled your need. Meaning, oh Sindi, you wanted to kill me, and your goal has been achieved. Soon I will leave this world. Ajarakumullah. Then Imam Al-Kathim salawatullahi alayhi began feeling the effects of the poison as he was in the dark dungeon of Harun, away from his beloved family members. Sayyidi Master, Ya Bab al-Hawa'ij, where were Banu Hashim? Where was Fatima al-Ma'suma during that time? Where was your beloved Qasim? Salawatullahi alayhim. Ajarakumullah. Days before his martyrdom, the meets the Imam and he tells him, Master, we cannot withstand this anymore. When will salvation arrive? As in, we cannot keep on waiting. We want to be in the presence. They set you الحوائج. Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam told them, Al-Faraju Qareeb ya ibn Suwaid. Salvation is near, O son of Suwaid. Ali told them, when shall it arrive? Imam Al-Kathim told them, it shall arrive on Friday morning on the bridge of Baghdad. Ali thought that the Imam alayhi salam is going to be that on Friday morning he will meet the Imam once again, as the Imam will be alive in this world on the bridge of Baghdad. And so Ali ibn Suwaid says, at that point I went to the houses of the Shias and I knocked the doors of those houses, one door after the other, and I informed the Shias that the Imam alayhi salam is going to come out from the jail, from the dungeon of Harun. He's going to come out and we're going to meet him on the bridge of Baghdad on Friday morning. Ajarakallah ya baqiyatullah. On Friday morning, the Shias gathered beside the bridge, only to see 4 guards holding a body, carrying a body of a deceased man. However, what's surprising is that there were chains on the legs and the hands of that body. That was the body of Musa ibn Ja'far salawatullah wa salamu alayh. They placed the body of the Imam on the bridge, and a call was made. Someone called out saying, هذا إمام الرافضة. This is the Imam of the Rafidha. He has died, and his death was a natural death. Come and look at him. Allahu Akbar. Ali ibn Suwaid could not believe his eyes. He came forth and looked at the face of the body. He says, I looked at the face and I saw that it was the face of my master Musa ibn Ja'far alayhim as-salam. And so Ali began crying over the Imam. May Allah bless the poet as he says, نعش بن جعفر حمالون تحمله. نعش بن جعفر حمالون تحمله. فأين عنه السرايا بني عدنان. He says the deceased body of Ibn Ja'far of Musa was being carried by the guards. Where were the warriors of Banu Hashim on that day? Ajarakumullah. Ali ibn Suwaid began crying. All of a sudden, one of his companions who happened to be one of his friends who happened to be a Christian doctor came by. One of the companions of Ali came by. He was a Christian doctor. When Ali saw him, he told him, "Oh, he who stands in front of me, I ask you for the sake of Jesus Christ alayhi salam to look at this man and tell me what is the reason behind his death." Why did he ask this? Because Sindi ibn Shahik was telling the people, we did not kill him. His death was a natural death. Ajarakumullah. And so the doctor told Ali, uncover his palm for me. The palm was uncovered. The doctor took the palm of the Imam and began looking at it. As he was shaking his head, it's as if the doctor was not pleased with something. Ali told him, what has happened? The doctor told him, "O Ibn Suwaid, O son of Suwaid, does this man have a tribe?" Ali told him, of course he has a tribe. This is Musa ibn Ja'far. This is the master of Banu Hashim. And so the doctor told him, "O Ibn Suwaid, send a message to his tribe. Tell them to come and seek vengeance for this man, for he has been poisoned." أيوا إمامه وموسى وكاظمه ويلي ألف ألف يا حيف ألف يا حيف ألف واكثر وسافة. يظل نعشك على جسر الرصافة. The poet tells the Imam, my heart breaks for you, O son of Ja'far. My heart breaks for you. I am overwhelmed with sorrow for your tragedy. Your body was left on the bridge of Baghdad. وطبيب القلب بشفك وشافه يقول ولا عشير هذا تظهر. The doctor was beside your body, looking at your palm as he was saying, isn't there a tribe who shall come and seek vengeance for this man? يقول ولا عشيرا هذا تظهر. أجركم الله. I say يا باب الحوائج, your tragedy is truly heart-wrenching, truly heart-breaking. You were a stranger in Baghdad. You were imprisoned by Harun, placed in a dark pit. You were tortured by a Sindi ibn Shahik and were poisoned as you were away from your family members. But Sayyidi, at the end of the day, a great procession took place in Baghdad as people participated in your burial procession, especially after Sulaiman bin Ja'far knew about the death of the Imam and told his men to go and carry the body of Musa bin Ja'far alayhim as-salam, and to make a call to the people of Baghdad to tell them whosoever would like to gaze at the sweet man, son of the sweet man, Musa ibn Ja'far, then let him emerge, let him come out. Yes, there was a great procession done for you, Sayyidi. However, my heart breaks for your grandfather, the stranger of Karbala, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, who was left on the sand of Karbala for 3 days without burial. 3 days, Ya Bab al-Hawaish. His body was left without burial. It was not washed, it was not shrouded. As if I see Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha on the 11th eve of Muharram calling the enemies, saying, Ama fikum Muslim yukaffinu hadha as-salib. Isn't there a Muslim amongst you who will shroud this man whose clothing was robbed? Ama fikum Muslim yuwari hadha al-gharib. Isn't there a Muslim amongst you who will bury the stranger? وقبر ببغداد لنفس زكية تضمنها الرحمن في الغرفات. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك بأحب الخلق إليك محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين والتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين فرج عنا يا الله. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman, to make us from his sincere followers and supporters, to forgive our sins, to conceal our defects, and to fulfill our needs. If anyone has a need, ask it at the moment and Allah Ta'ala will answer you. Allahumma bihaqqi imamina wa sayyidina bab al-hawaiji ilayk Musa ibn Ja'far salawatullahi alayhima اقضي حاجة كل محتاج لا سيما حوائج الحاضرين والمشاهدين ومن سألني الدعاء يا رب العالمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal all sick believers for the sake of the sick Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. And we ask him to bless all souls of those who passed away, all believers who passed away, especially our dear family members and friends, those who are completely forgotten and never mentioned, the great martyrs and the noble scholars. إلى أرواحهم جميعا وإلى أرواح أمواتكم وأمواتي وإلى أرواح والدي وأخي وحبيبي حسين نبعث ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب الفاتحة تسبقها صلاة على محمد وآل محمد. وأسمعكم إن شاء الله.